The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
On this episode of Comes with the Territory, the Virgin Islands National Park is proposing significant fee changes, including a 100% hike in the Trunk Bay entrance fee and a new fee structure for docking vessels. Local charter boat operator Garth Hudson joins us to share his concerns about how these proposed changes could impact the charter boat industry. A global construction management firm is suing Virgin Islands authorities to block a $137 million disaster recovery contract that they claim was improperly awarded to another company. We'll have the details. Plus, the fallout over the government's dealings with Mount Ethos continues as the founder's guilty plea to fraud and bribery is unsealed, months after two cabinet members resigned amid an ongoing federal investigation. Stay tuned as this week's panel joins the conversation to analyze these hot-button issues and more. Comes with the Territory starts now. Welcome to Comes with the Territory. I'm Jeanette Millen-Young, sitting in for Leslie Comisión. For the first time since 2015, the Virgin Islands National Park is looking to raise its amenity fees. Park officials say the increase is meant to address ongoing issues like resource damage, restroom maintenance, and overall facility upkeep. However, some residents have raised concerns about the proposal. Here's more. The Virgin Islands National Park is seeking public input on proposed changes to its amenity fees, which could take effect as early as January 1st, 2025. The changes include several fee hikes and new charges across various park facilities, including a new $10 daily parking fee at Camille Bay. Under the proposal, a day pass for Trunk Bay would increase from $5 to $10, and a new annual pass would be introduced at $60. The age requirement for passes would change to include individuals 10 years and older, down from the current age of 15. Some local residents believe a Trunk Bay fee change is ill-timed.
Right now is not the right time to raise the fees. Like the taxi tariff, if we just raised the tariff, the rates went up for the people coming to the beach. So now you're changing the rate to enter the beach. And this is a national park. So for this entity, I feel that they should keep it on a lower level.
Under the proposed changes, mooring fees for standard vessels would rise from $26 to $40 per day, while larger vessels would see fees jump to $60. New fees include a $1 per foot docking fee at the National Park Service Finger Pier.
If they do decide to implement a fee, I would like to see them maintain at least a boat ramp a little bit more. The Finger Pier, I could see them charging for the Finger Pier because it's newly renovated. Again, in my opinion, I feel like $1 a foot may be a little excessive, but I wouldn't see any problem with them charging a fee for the Finger Pier with the condition that it's in.
The Park Service announced the proposed changes in a press release on September 9th and held a public meeting 2 days later, where many residents voiced concerns, especially those in the boating industry. Charter boat operators argued that the new fees could significantly increase their costs, but park officials emphasized that areas like docks and moorings are especially costly to maintain. They said the proposed amenity fee increases were based on studies conducted by the National Park examining prices of similar public and private services within the Virgin Islands and nearby areas. Joining the show to talk about how these proposed fees will impact the local boating community is Garth Hudson, founder of Over the Line Charters. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
We also reached out to the National Park Service to have them on the show, but they were unable to join us. However, Administrative Officer Janice Williams spoke with us earlier about why the National Park Service is proposing these fee changes and how they will benefit the park, residents, and visitors. Let's hear what she had to say.
the Virgin Islands National Park hasn't raised any of its expanded amenity fees in about 10 years. The proposed amenity fees increase and the new proposed amenity fees is to help National Park maintain a standard of quality visitor enjoyment while visiting the park, and also to provide economic opportunities for the local community and businesses. The fees will go towards enhancing our existing structures, such as Trunk Bay bathroom and shower renovations, Hassel Island improvements, historic structure stabilization, and coral restorations. Currently, the fees have paid for the finger pier, which is over $524,000, standard vessel mooring renovations, which was over $124,000, large vessel moorings renovations, which is over $234,000. But we want to hear from the public. We want to hear the public views, their thoughts, their questions about the proposed fees. So we're inviting the public to go ahead right now and make their comments. They have up until October 9th, up to 11:59 p.m. to share their views, their concerns, and their questions with us.
Public comments are being accepted on the National Park Service website at parkplanning.nps.gov/VIIS expanded amenity fees, where a complete list of the proposed changes is also available. Comments can also be submitted via email to VIIS_interpretation@nps.gov. Now, Mr. Hudson, you recently attended a Park Service public meeting where the proposed fee changes were discussed and several concerns were raised. What are some of your thoughts about what the administrative officer, Janice Williams, had to say about the benefit to the visitors, residents, and businesses?
The fee structure that affects the boating community is twofold. One, they want to charge to use their finger pier. And number two, they want to charge to pick up a mooring ball anywhere in the park to use. I just feel that without knowing all of their yearly maintenance expenses on the moorings and on the park dock, this is a really hefty proposal. I also noticed that they have annual options for Trunk Bay fees that they want to increase. They have an annual option for the dinghy dock. They have an annual option for the boat ramp that they'd like to start charging for. But for use of the finger pier, they want to collect every time somebody touches it $1 a foot.
So would you say that is your biggest issue with the proposed changes for the fees?
Yes, it's the amount. I did some rough math from the charter side. This doesn't include the private sector. But at 100 pickups a day or 100 touches of the dock from various boats, which is on the conservative side, at 35 feet being the average boat. There are many boats that are 50, 60 feet that use it, so they would be paying $50 or $60, and there are some smaller boats. So I just did that on an average, and they would be pulling in $1.27 million a year, every year.
That's quite an amount.
That dock is there.
So what you're saying to me is that's the amount that would come as a result of the $1 per foot docking fee? Correct.
And for the mooring fees, I did a little study. And if we averaged on the low end 200 pickups, any boat that touches and picks up a mooring, even if it's for 20 minutes, you're going to get charged $40. The moorings are pretty packed throughout the year, obviously in the off season less, but it'll be more than 200 during the high season. That averages out.
No, I just want to take you back, because based on what you're saying, so you disagree with the actual model that they have. You'd rather it be not annual, but usage, or usage versus annual?
I would rather it be some sort of annual fee that reflects their actual expenses. They haven't shown us any expenses. We may know what it cost. I think I just heard that it was $500 plus $1,000 for the new dock. But what are your annual expenses on that dock? What are your annual fees to maintain these moorings? That needs to be presented to the public, so we have something that we can work with.
In other words, if they would communicate a little more clearer and give you more information, you feel a little bit more comfortable with the increase, so that you know exactly where your money is going?
I agree that there may need to be an increase. I agree that maintenance needs to happen on the dock, and they did just put a new dock in, and I agree that there needs to be maintenance on the mooring balls. However, the numbers that they are proposing are staggering, and they're not sharing with us what these maintenance costs or yearly costs are. So it feels like the boating community would be funding half of the national park at this point.
So, are we understanding that lack of communication has been an issue? Even though we saw in the package that there was a meeting, not enough meetings or not enough information shared with you during those meetings.
Not enough information. We simply don't know how much it costs to maintain the dock. It's a brand new dock. I don't know if it's a 25 or a 30 year that dock will last, what the depreciation schedule is, and what the yearly costs are to maintain it. Same with the mooring balls.
Hmm. So what do you wish to know in terms of what is the information that you believe is actually missing? And I know you say that you like to have them, show you cost versus what is being implemented, but what exactly do you need to see?
They have we pay from the charter industry side. We pay what's called a commercial use authorization fee yearly per boat, every charter boat that wants to do business in the park. And it ranges from $300 per boat to, I believe it's $500 or a little more, depending on the size of the boat. So they know the number of boats that have that permit. We would like to see what that generates for revenue and where that's used. And knowing that would give us some more information along with their expenses. We're willing to help fill in the gaps, but I can assure you it doesn't cost more than $1 million a year to maintain that dock, nor does it cost over $2 million a year to maintain the mooring field.
What is the traffic like there? Because let's talk about volume, right? If they feel that they have to raise the amount based on how many boaters there are, maybe that makes sense. But if you think that there is enough traffic, maybe they don't need to raise it at the amount that they did.
It is extremely congested when you're picking up guests, dropping them for lunch, dropping them at the end of the day, and using that dock. To bring another point, if they try to charge a daily fee, that is going to add to the congestion with them having to come out and collect money from each boat and write a receipt and whatnot. It's going to even be more congested in there. So I just don't feel they've gone from 0 to 100 in 0.2 seconds here.
Is that right?
So yeah.
So what would have been helpful? I mean, you didn't see it coming. What would have been helpful for the boarding community before they came up with this raise in the fees?
Sorry, what would have?
You didn't know, you didn't have advance notice. I mean, it would have been helpful if you had known maybe a month or 2 months or 6 months ahead of time.
We got 2 days notice.
2 days.
Yeah, September 9th, the public was notified that there was a public meeting in St. John, and that was on the 11th. It was a packed house regardless, but I know a lot of people that just already had plans, didn't have the opportunity to go over there, and now, we have 30 days with no prior notice to try to let our clients know and tourists know in the States and put out email blasts and let them know.
So you had to change your own fees?
I would have to change my fees if this goes through. We're going to have to look at it.
When you say if it goes through, isn't it a done deal?
No, it's proposed.
Okay.
According to the park, these are proposed fees, and this is the comment period for us to weigh in.
Okay. And so has the boating community come together to discuss this, and how are you going to show a united front?
We're working on that right now. We don't have a lot of notice, but VIPCA, which is the VI Professional Charter Association, they are going to be weighing in heavily, and we're trying to, let everyone know. And the private sector too. I'm sort of wearing the hat as a charter boat owner, but this affects all of the private boats that are out there too. So if you own a boat and you want to go to lunch on St. John and stop and drop somebody off at the dock, or if you want to go for a swim at Maho Bay and pick up a mooring ball, you're going to pay $40. You're going to pay $20, $30 to drop off at the dock there. That's going to add up very quick.
So even if they don't stay, they have to pay that much?
Correct. Yep. Even if you want to go for a swim for 20 minutes, you're going to have to pay $40 at a mooring.
So looking ahead, how can the local boating community and the park work together to find a balance that supports both dock maintenance and local businesses?
They just need to be transparent. This is a federally funded operation. It's not a not-for-profit company, so they need to be transparent on what they need. And like I said at the beginning, we need to see what their expenses are, what their projected revenue is. The boating community shouldn't be the low-hanging fruit to fund their road repairs, their other projects that they want to do in the park. You can't just dive into our small businesses. We are laced with fees as it is, and we would probably have to pass these on to the consumer. And boating isn't cheap, so this one's going to be a tough one to swallow if this goes through.
What are some of the major costs that you have associated? Because the national park should know that, but the general public isn't quite aware.
Yeah, boating is from the charter industry standpoint, insurance and liability is huge. I have a 4-boat business, for example. My insurance went this year alone from $36,000 to $80,000 for my
That's
liability
staggering.
insurance. It is. So it makes you have to think twice about, do I carry the level of liability that I carried last year? Do I carry as much on the hull value as I did, or what are my options? The cost of fuel hasn't seemed to come down much around here. Parts, labor. My mechanic, for instance, is $150 an hour to work on boats. Your marina fees, your dock fees, these are all for-profit companies. Their fees go up every year. So inflation it hurts. And we're small businesses. So if we thought we could add another $70 or $80 a day that the park wants to impose now, if we thought we could add that onto our fees for the small business, we would. But we think we're priced where we need to be individually as operators, and now we're getting hit with another $70 or $80 a day.
So some of what you're
tough.
sharing right now, I'm sure is going to be part of your comments. And so when you all come together and you put all of that together, the national park may well take that into consideration.
Absolutely. I will be as thorough as I can in my comments, and I'm trying to get others to do the same.
And so at this current time, is it slow? Is it busy right now? How is it affecting you at this particular moment?
Currently, we are in the dead of our slow season. So usually after the first 10 days in August, business levels really drop. September is really, really slow. In October, it picks up a tiny bit. But, we've got the Ritz-Carlton Club. They've closed from mid-August to November 8th. They're entirely shut down. So that stuff like that affects us.
Of course.
This is our slow season. So, yeah, we're feeling it.
Yes, you're feeling it, but hopefully this will give you the impetus to, come together and make sure to communicate with the national park, and that they'll be able to listen to your concerns. Is there anything that we missed that you'd like the public to know?
I think we did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, we covered everything, you think?
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I really thank you for taking the time to explain all of these issues before us with the boating community, and I hope to see you soon again.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And coming up, we'll hear from this week's panel, but first, let's look at the topics on the table. A $137 million contract to manage disaster recovery projects in the territory is at the center of a new lawsuit against the Office of Disaster Recovery and the Virgin Islands Public Finance Authority. Global construction management firm Hale International is suing the government entities, claiming they improperly awarded the 3-year contract for project and construction management services to CH2M Hale Inc. In a lawsuit filed September 10th, Hale International is asking for a temporary restraining order to prevent the PFA and ODR from executing the contract. The company argues that the bidding process was unfair and violated both federal and Virgin Islands procurement laws. Hale International states that it submitted a 398-page proposal totaling approximately $30.2 million, nearly $107 million less than the winning bid from CH2M. The complaint reads VIPFA/ODR failed to comply with the applicable procurement rules when it awarded the construction management project management contract to CH2M, who bid nearly $107 million higher than all of the other bidders, including plaintiff. The lawsuit alleges that the contract award was marked by an appearance of impropriety and conflict of interest and waste of public funds. It also claims that the agencies failed to follow the express terms of the RFP by awarding a single contract for both project and construction management. Hill International is seeking either a rebid of the contract or to have the award given to them instead. In a press statement responding to the lawsuit, ODR said it complied with all applicable procurement rules in the evaluation of the proposals submitted in response to the RFP. According to the ODR press release, the 3-year contract cost of $137 million is about 5% of the overall $8 billion worth of projects to be managed, which is the industry standard. The Department of Interior's Office of Insular Affairs recently announced a transfer of approximately $181 million to the territory, an advance on the estimated rum excise taxes for fiscal year 2025. This amount is significantly less than the $212 million rum tax cover-over payments to the Virgin Islands for fiscal year 2024 and the $226 million the territory received for fiscal year 2023. The decline in rum tax cover-over payments for the third straight year raises concerns about the financial stability of the Government Employees Retirement System, or GRS. Under the revised Organic Act, a portion of the excise taxes collected on rum produced in the USVI and imported into the mainland United States is transferred back or covered over to the territory. These funds have historically provided critical revenue for government operations. In 1999, Congress temporarily increased the cover-over rate from the original $10.50 to $13.25 per proof gallon. Although this higher rate expired several times over the years, it was often reinstated through retroactive tax legislation. In 2022, the VI government created a special purpose vehicle using a portion of the rum cover-over funds to stabilize GERS, which was facing insolvency. The plan was based on the assumption of a $13.25 per proof gallon rate. However, when the higher rate expired in 2021 and remained at $10.50, it created a significant shortfall. Congress has failed to act on the issue and extend the higher rate or make it permanent, leaving the retirement system in a precarious position.
Here we go again, is basically what I would say, because this is now essentially the third year since the funding note that the GERS has or is threatened with not receiving the full amount of the funding note that was a part of the securitization vehicle that was entered into in 2022. The first year, the government was able to make up the shortfall with local funds. Then the second year, which would have been 2023, we were actually shorted a full $34 million, which we're still awaiting. And now here this year, 2024, we are hearing that based upon the reduction in the cover-over revenue, that we will likely experience a shortfall once again. We have not been informed by the PFA, the Public Finance Authority, as to exactly how much of the $154 million pledged that we will be receiving this year. We've heard anywhere from the 31 million that's shorted to 60 odd million. I guess we'll be finding out shortly, probably around October 1st.
We were there this morning at the request of Director Jennifer O'Neill, the Director of Management and Budget, to take a look at her information technology operating systems for what she believed is a digital breach. The reason that this was asked was simply because back in May of this year, VIPD uncovered a number of covert monitoring devices in several government agencies.
Fast forward 2 years from that 2022 press conference, both Martinez and O'Neill have resigned from their positions, and the man hired by the Virgin Islands Police Department to uncover those covert devices has admitted to planting them himself, according to a recently unsealed federal plea agreement. David Whitaker, founder of the cybersecurity firm MonEthos, was contracted by the VIPD in 2022 to investigate covert listening devices found in government offices. However, federal court documents reveal that Whitaker orchestrated the entire scheme by planting the devices himself to fabricate work for his company. He then falsely claimed to discover them and billed the police department over $130,000 for the fraudulent investigation. Whitaker has pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of bribery. The bribery charge involves payments to a VIPD agent totaling at least $66,000 in cash, along with restaurant supplies and luxury trips. These bribes were exchanged for securing payments on his invoices and obtaining additional contracts. The identity of the VIPD agent who accepted the bribes has not been disclosed. In June, Governor Albert Bryan Jr. announced at a press conference that he had requested the resignations of VIPD Commissioner Ray Martinez and Office of Management and Budget Director Jennifer O'Neill amid a federal investigation, but provided limited details.
I want to stress that this is an active investigation being run by our federal partners. Therefore, there's an absolute limit of what we can share or what we can discuss with you at this time.
I know a lot's been in the press about Ray Martinez, about Jennifer O'Neill. They have not been charged with anything. They have not been indicted. What they've been asked to do is to provide information, documents, cell phones, that sort of thing. And this is common in any investigation. So with respect to them, I say let's see where things go.
Governor Bryan also confirmed that Sports, Parks, and Recreation Commissioner Calvert White had been asked to provide information as part of the federal investigation.
There has been a request for information from Commissioner White.
Okay. Has he resigned?
No, he hasn't.
Okay. Are you asking for his resignation?
No, not at this time. This is a recent development, so we're looking into what his exposure may be.
Before his guilty plea, Whitaker, who has a prior history of fraud, managed to secure multi-million-dollar contracts with several government agencies, including the VIPD, the Department of Education, and the Department of Sports, Parks, and Recreation. The government has since canceled all contracts with MonEthos.
The government canceled a contract with someone who openly admitted and has pled guilty to defrauding the government of the Virgin Islands. I think that it would have been imprudent for the government of the Virgin Islands to continue to proceed doing business with that entity, given what has come to light.
Joining me on set to analyze these issues is attorney Adrian Dudley, founding partner of Dudley Rich, LLP. From our St. Croix studio, let's welcome Jamila Russell, host of the political radio show Just Jamila on WSTX AM 970, Ryan Flegel, owner of Feather Leaf Inn on St. Croix. Welcome to the show, everyone. And before we dive into the hot button topics, I'd like to quickly get your thoughts on the National Park's proposed fee changes. Jamila, let's start with you. What's your take on how these changes might impact the community?
Well, I think once again, this is the federal government exercising their political power over the United States Virgin Islands and the small business community that exists here. The National Park Service pays no property taxes for the vast amount of land it occupies on St. John. They pay a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes that doesn't equate to the amount of property taxes that collectively Virgin Islanders would pay if they were paying taxes on the acreage that the Park Service occupies. And to give people 2 days notice to raise fees, I just think is unconscionable. And it's once again the federal government exercising their political power over the residents of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you for that. And Attorney Dudley, what are your thoughts on these changes?
Well,
proposed changes, let me make that clear.
I understand what Jamila is saying, and I think she has a good point. However, A national park is an attraction not just for the residents, but for people from all over the world who come to visit St. John. And it is appropriate to maintain the park and its amenities in an appropriate way. I think it makes sense to raise the fees after 10 years. However, I think the lack of notice, the fact that the fees were raised exponentially instead of gradually over a reasonable interval of time, is unfair to local businesses who have to pass this cost on to consumers. And it's really expensive to go boating. It is something that is reserved not for the middle class even, but for people who have a lot of money. It's 4 figures to take a boat over to the BVI, and then you have to spend a lot of money in the BVI just to be there. So I think that has to be taken into consideration. I think Garth Hudson, your guest previously, made a very good point about the fact that we don't know what the costs are. Seeing as this is federally funded, it makes sense to charge fees, but it also makes sense to have those who pay the fees be knowledgeable about exactly what goes into those charges.
Good point. Mr. Flegel?
Jeanette, before you go to Mr. Flegel, can I say something? While I agree with Attorney Dudley, research has shown that the Park Service on St. John as an attraction nationally, when compared to all of the other National Park Service, doesn't draw the number of tourists that the Park Service would make us believe in the territory. And so if they could present data on how many people actually go to St. John to visit the Park Service, because on their own website, our park in St. John ranks on the lower end of the scale in terms of visitor per capita. And so I don't think that while it's an attraction, I don't think that people come to St. John specifically to go to the national park.
Point. And now to Mr. Flegel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that Mr. Hudson made some great points when he was talking about what are the pressures on the boating community. And he actually seemed to say that the boating community is willing to pay their fair share, which I was pleased to hear. I might be paraphrasing that. That might be more than what he really said. But I heard him say, look, if it costs X number of dollars to maintain the pier and X number of dollars to maintain the moorings, it's fair to be charged for that. So I think that's great. What I actually would like to say about this, though, is we often overlook, when we talk about fees, we often overlook how those fees are collected and what the convenience or inconvenience may be. And I equate this to what we do with parking meters, something that all of us are familiar with where we go around the world. Sometimes you're going to pay $1 to go into a shop for 30 minutes, but it's going to take you 20 minutes to log into an app and do something and figure it all out so you can go in there and spend 20 minutes in that shop. So when we're talking about how these fees are collected, I think that's equally, if not more important than what the fees are. I think it's great that the Park Service says we want to maintain our facilities, we want to maintain our dock, we want to maintain the mooring system, we want to have this available for residents and visitors alike. That's good. The question in my mind is, okay, how do we come up with that efficient and equitable use of cost sharing to make that happen? I am not opposed to seeing businesses pay to use the amenities that are provided to make their business successful. So I think we can come up with a program that would bridge all of that. And I think that's what the Park Service is reaching out to people to do. So hopefully we can get that taken care of.
Good point, good point. And Attorney Dudley, would you like to round up this discussion on the park fees?
Well, I think everyone has made very good points. And I think the park is going to consider them. The comment period of 30 days, given the size of the community, is not unreasonable. It could be longer. However, it is important for the fees to be instituted at a reasonable rate over a reasonable interval of time.
Okay, so let's move on to our first topic, the lawsuit involving the Public Finance Authority and the Office of Disaster Recovery over a $137 million contract. It's quite concerning. Do you agree, Attorney?
I think that this is an important issue because what Hill has not really alleged and because the facts aren't known, there is a significant amount of work to be done in this project management agreement. We're talking about managing all of the public works, all of the infrastructure, including our entire water system, as well as our hospitals and our schools, and our other infrastructure, to be managed by one project manager, although it did say that there would be at least 2 project managers, and maybe that's a reason, maybe that's something that they considered. However, it to me, knowing as much as I know about these projects, the cost of $30 million seems very low to me, and it does not accommodate the kinds of duties and responsibilities that the project manager over such an incredibly large, multi-billion-dollar project is going to be responsible for.
So it is your opinion that they probably underbidded?
Yes.
But not by $100 million.
I think he underbid. It's difficult to tell, not knowing what's in the bid and not knowing what the RFP looks like, to tell whether or not he grossly underbid. I suspect, because I have experience in the construction area, that very often there's a gross underbid and then there are cost increases that go over time, which in fact make the bid ultimately, or make the cost ultimately, what the original bid by the competing bidder, who was much larger, would have been. And that's distressing to me. It just seems unreasonable. However, because there's such a vast difference, it seems to me that Hill was entitled to an immediate explanation. And I believe by the rules, he's entitled to an immediate explanation. And not having one, then it makes sense that he would bring the action.
Yep, they're asking for it.
He wasn't getting any attention.
So, Mr. Flegel, as a businessman and following this story, did you think, or would you think that is somewhat of an unfair bidding process?
Oh, I can't speak to whether or not the bidding process was fair or not in terms of the request for proposals and people putting in their bids. But when you have one bid for 30 some odd million and another bid for 130 some odd million, and you choose the one for 137 million, that hurts me as a resident of the Virgin Islands. And I think all of us who are worried about why is all this money being spent, not just on the issue of this contract, but all over the island. Why are the potholes not filled? Why is the electrical service not working? And we look around and we say, gosh, each and every bid that seems to be happening, somehow there's more going out and not enough coming in to get it done, not enough effort, not enough work. And when you see an example of the government could have saved $100 million, at least on paper, of what this is happening, and I acknowledge the point of your guests saying, hey, maybe that 30 some odd million dollars really isn't 30 some odd million. It's not that price until it's actually completed. It's still painful for every resident of the Virgin Islands to see that kind of waste and dismissal of an opportunity to save money.
So, Ms. Russell, ODR says the procurement rules were followed all the way. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll let the facts play out in court. However, I share Mr. Flegel's concerns in that we have a cash crisis in the territory. And when you hear that there is this huge difference between who was rewarded the bid versus somebody who was competing, it raises questions. And also what's raising questions is whether or not we're doing the appropriate background checks on businesses who want to come to our territory to do business. To Attorney Dudley's point, some people underbid and then they do contract changes that raises the contract price up. However, sometimes we have learned from the past where we've gotten into bed as a community with businesses whose intentions aren't good and they aren't well meaning to the Virgin Islands community. And research has shown that the company that was rewarded the bid had to actually settle an agreement because of some sort of discrepancies with work that they did with the federal government from a story that I read. So it begs the question, who's doing the research to make sure that the Virgin Islands doesn't find itself in another VTOL situation that the Virgin Islands doesn't find itself wanting and figuring out, being left holding the bag with incomplete projects, such as the Polly Joseph Stadium that still isn't completed. And we want to see things built. So I think that we need to take our time, do the research, figure out who's coming here to do business, and realize that not all money is good money, and not that everybody who's coming here to the territory has good intentions for the territory, and some of them are disaster vultures, and they see an opportunity and they'll take that opportunity.
Mouthful, Ms. Russell. Thank you. Let's move on to our second topic, and that's the decline in rum tax payments and how they're affecting the government employees' retirement system. Before I get into your thoughts, let's hear from GRS Administrator Angel Dawson and how the shortfall impacts the retirement system.
We do depend on this funding note of about $3 billion over 30 years. To build up the system. We've shown that when we get the monies that we do a great job with investing the monies. Had we received the $34 million that we should have gotten in addition to the $124 that we received last year, we could have grown the portfolio by even more because we invest the monies and we're presently experiencing about a 20% return. Therefore, there would have been another 20% on top of the additional $31 million. We have to sound the alarm and we have to move very aggressively to ensure that there's no temporary insolvency because that's untenable to our retirees who have worked many years to be able to retire respectfully, right? So that's why we're here and we're working very hard to ensure that they will continue to be able to receive their payments. Now we've proposed some alternatives that would help us with these shortfalls, such as the VA government funding our annual administrative costs, which actually occurred for many decades before it was discontinued in recent years. And we've also indicated that per the law, we will be increasing the employer contribution by 3 percentage points come January of 2025. That'll be about another $13 million annually, on top of the $15 million for our administrative expenses. Those measures not only address the looming insolvency in 2037, 2038, but it also places the GERS on an even more solid foundation where we could look to being fully funded by the year 2046.
So, Attorney Dudley, we hear the grave concern expressed by Mr. Dawson regarding the lower rates that we keep getting. There's confusion out there somewhat regarding whether the word should be used, Congress has failed to act, or has the Virgin Islands introduced the legislation to change the rate?
Well, as I understand it, the rate was set at $13 and change, and it was extended over time. There needed to be a request to continue the extension, and there was no request. And no one figured that out until well after the fact when the commitment of funds had been made to GERS, to GERS. And that's very distressing. The other thing that's very distressing is that the local government claims it's going to be able to fund the administrative costs of running GERS and that it won't be funded by contributions. This, and added to that, is a 3% increase in what the government is contributing. All of this means that revenues from the general fund are going to be responsible for subsidizing GERS, which should be operating on its own funds that it can invest for retirees. This adds up to a crisis. And unfortunately, unless Congress agrees with a request to extend the amount from $10 and change to $13 and change, we are in big trouble. When you look at the revenue of the Virgin Islands as is, and the fact that we're running shortfalls in many areas, small vendors are being not paid, and we're not meeting our obligations in a timely fashion because we've got a vast payroll we've got to cover. And it's worrisome that that action has not been taken with respect to this defined benefit plan. It's one of the few remaining defined benefit plans in the country. Unions have these plans, for example, because they're so expensive to operate. And our retirees are very fortunate to have this. But something has to be done if the rum cover-over is going to be the only source. Something also has to be done about the fact that the government has committed to underwriting the administrative costs of the agency. That, I think, is very troubling because we don't have that money.
And so everybody pays for the government employees'
That's right.
retirement system. But I wanted to move on to Jamila about the special purpose vehicle legislation that the legislature moved on based on believing that the Virgin Islands would get its $13.25 per rate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think again, there was an opportunity that was missed and that was lost. We had a Democrat in the White House, we had a Democratic Congress, and our Congresswoman at the time thought it was more prudent to be engaged in other matters. And the statement from her campaign at the time was the National Party didn't see it fit. Congress didn't want to introduce the 1325. So that was a lost opportunity. And it's an opportunity that we have not been able to get back. And as a result, we're not getting the 1325. But when the legislature enacted the special purpose vehicle, there was a letter, an agreement from the Department of the Treasury indicating that they were in agreement for the 1325 because you had to get permission from the Department of the Treasury to move forward with the special purpose vehicle. So it's my hope that the federal government, because we are a colony, that the federal government understands that they have a responsibility to continue to have our retirement system remain solvent and, stay true to their commitment and the commitment that was made. I need to correct Attorney Dudley. I don't think that the government of the Virgin Islands has agreed to underwriting the administrative cost of the GRS. I think the administrator of the GRS would like and have said that the government previously did that, but the government is not currently underwriting the administrative cost of the GRS.
So the increase that he's talking about
any
in January,
legislation to that.
the increase he's talking about, Mr. Dawson is talking about in January, is not a done deal?
Under the statute, the GRS has the opportunity by law to increase the employer contribution. So the employer contribution up to 3%, and they have indicated that they're going to increase the employer contribution, which, several legislatures ago, they enacted legislation that allowed and gave the GRS the opportunity, the authority rather, to increase the employer contribution to remain solvent, and they're going to exercise that option. They have indicated.
But it's important to note that if I understand correctly, what the Executive Director Dawson said was that increased contribution was going to keep the system solvent. That in fact, the government had indeed committed to underwrite because it did so before and it stopped doing it, but it was going to start again. That means once again, the taxpayers are going to have to pick up the tab for the administrative costs. And the taxpayers right now are greatly overburdened with GRT, with all kinds of revenue shortfalls that come as a result of businesses leaving and not being willing to step up and make the kinds of contributions. In fact, everyone's trying to save money on taxes, and the government needs the money. And so we're going to have to come to Jesus pretty soon.
I don't think that's what he said. I may have heard incorrectly, but I don't think that that's what he said. I think he said that he would like for the government to commit to underwriting, which is something they had previously done. But I don't think that the government of the Virgin Islands, absent of legislation, can underwrite the funding, the administrative cost of the GRS. That would have to be a budget bill. I have heard, I've been in the legislature for the entire budget process, and I have not seen nor heard or nor has the governor sent down a bill request asking for the 35th legislature to fund the GRS.
So we will move on to our next topic. I thank you for what you have weighed in on so far. But MonEthos founder David Whitaker pleaded guilty. Government contracts canceled. Two cabinet members resigned, and there's been lots of fallout. Ryan, Mr. Flegel, should the government have known about David Whitaker?
Absolutely. It was public knowledge. Mr. Whitaker pled guilty to fraud in 2011. There were national news stories about this. And for the government, yeah, I mean, we have government spokespersons saying, oh, even if there's somebody with a criminal background, that doesn't necessarily mean that we exclude them from government contracts. And quite frankly, I'm not buying it. If you have somebody who says, I'm a bank robber and I'm applying to be the manager of the bank, you don't hire that person. And when we're dealing with somebody who's been engaged in such a widespread fraud, to then come up and say, oh, I'm going to rename my company Ethos of good character, and then I'm going to come to the Virgin Islands and please give me this contract, and the government runs with it. Yeah, of course, this guy's at fault for doing this. He's pled guilty to something that is truly horrible, but our government bears responsibility for being able to sniff this out in advance and protect the people from this fraud occurring on our dime.
So, Attorney Dudley, better vetting of contractors is needed?
Absolutely. In this particular case, generally speaking, the vetting of contractors is extremely thorough. In this case, I do not understand why a person whose public criminal record could have easily been ascertained was still engaged to do something as sensitive as security under any circumstances. The idea that this person would have planted these listening devices, how on earth that could have happened, and what he did with that information and why they were put there in the first place is a mystery that I hope will be solved in the criminal case.
Criminal case. It's coming right up. Ms. Russell, what about the fallout with the government officials on this?
Well, I am as curious as anybody else to find out who public official or police official number one is. And I am thinking that if you give somebody a number one, that there must be a number two, number three, number four, possibly a number five. I just hope that we're able to, weed out the bad actors. And, this leaves a horrible stain on the Virgin Islands. And it's something that we have to hopefully learn from and, exercise, a level of what do you call it? A determination to not have bad actors amongst us. There's always going to be a bad seed, but we have to put parameters in place to protect the coffers of the Virgin Islands and protect the public from these charlatans that sometimes come to our shores. And, let this be a reminder to us all, not everything that glitters is gold and not all money is good money. And too often in the Virgin Islands, when we see somebody coming that we think has money or we think is doing well, we flock to them and we put them on a pedestal. And we need to stop idolizing false prophets and idols in the territory.
So, Ms. Russell, you did mention earlier about the stadium over in St. Croix, the Polly Joseph Stadium. And
Yes.
You just mentioned that these types of situations are happening too often. How often do you think is too often?
Once is too often. And it continues to happen. I think that the people in the Virgin Islands want to see projects completed. The people in the Virgin Islands want to see projects completed in a timely and an efficient manner where people aren't getting change orders, where cost is increased and the bottom line keeps rising and these businesses continue to make huge profits. And we can't use the spaces and the facilities that we're paying them to provide for us. I think people just want results, good, positive results.
So, Attorney Dudley, Ms. Russell just spoke about the change orders. This is something that is part of contracts all the time.
Yeah.
Is it overused here in the territory?
That depends on the contract. You can't make, I don't believe, a blanket statement about contracts because each contract is unique. The circumstances under which it's negotiated are unique, and the project itself has very often unique features. Everything in the Virgin Islands has to be made to order, if you wish, because we are an island and we have to depend so heavily on contractors and others to bring in the right materials and so forth. I think we should not assume by a blanket assumption that all business is bad, that all contractors are out to get you, that there are huge profits. There are not. There are reasonable profits which are satisfactory to keep the business going and to pay its employees. We can't always assume that business is out to get us. And that I would like to dispel that notion. I agree with your other guest, with Ms. Russell, that sometimes we run into problems like we did here. I find this incredible, frankly. But on the whole, I think we have to give our public officials a salute because they do a hard job. They do it all the time. And most often, not always, our projects do come to fruition, even though the potholes make us think they don't.
Mr. Flegel, let's round out this discussion with you as we close out the show. What are your thoughts on how you feel about what's going on here?
I think the problem's pervasive. Of course, you don't assume that anybody's a bad actor. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty. Everybody deserves the benefit of the doubt. But again, the problem isn't about the people like Whitaker. The problem is about our government, our system that allows this to occur over and over and over again in a way that hurts the people of the Virgin Islands. You know, when I first came here, I heard lots of people describe the government as, oh, you know, there's a little payout here, there's a little money there, there's corruption. And it sounded to me like unfounded rumors. And now we're seeing people pleading guilty. We're seeing FBI investigations. And I'm wondering how far this all goes, because when you see somebody who is caught doing something not just wrong, but absolutely corrupt to the core like this, you have to say, not what's the problem with them, but what's the problem with the people who allowed that to happen? And if there are more people and more people and more people that are allowing that to happen, that needs to be weeded out. And we've got to have a fresh start in a way that feels
salient
like
points. Yeah. But unfortunately, that is all the show we have for you today. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for an all-new episode of Comes with the Territory. In the meantime, for your news updates, tune in to WTJX Newsfeed on weekdays at 5 p.m. on 93.1 FM or by downloading the WTJX app. I'm Jeanette Millen-Young. For all of us here at WTJX Channel 12, take care.